Good morning, everybody. David Atkins, target individual. Um, and so I'm going to start out with a Bible verse. The Lord works out everything to its proper end, even the wicked for a day of disaster. And Lord, let's hope so. I have faith it'll happen like that. Today I'm going to be talking about. I found the torture memos, the Senate Intelligence Committee's declassified torture report, and um, I've been trying to set up interviews. Last week I had 3 interview schedules, and right when they were supposed to get on there, excuse me, my nose is itching. I'm not a perp. Right when the interview was scheduled, as you can see, they canceled. So it's been crazy about these interviews. I realized, people are getting tortured. Me too. And I do my best to try to schedule interviews and stuff. And when and then I get ready through and fight through my torture to do them, and they cancel. It gets frustrating, but I understand. So hopefully I have like 7 interviews scheduled right now. Well, they're not scheduled yet, but they are in the works. 7 people are waiting to be interviewed. So I'm going to get them done when I can. Torture is a horrific topic. So I'm going to be talking about all kinds of different torture techniques that they use. Okay, torture is a horrific topic. Most minds will turn away from it because it can't be comprehended that humans can be motivated or computer programs can be run to do this to other sentient beings. Just when we would believe we were becoming more civilized as a culture, the technology for torture has advanced more than 100-fold in recent decades. This summary will get into the minds of dishonorable monsters of psychology of torture. Those like Dick Cheney, who helped authorize it under certain administrations and regimes, the U.S. government have been proven to be criminal under U.S. law, treaties, and international criminal court. This full report discloses the spectrum of techniques and interrogation and torture used by the U.S. and its allies. These technologies are still classified as state secrets and will not be discussed. The technologies used are still classified as state secrets and will not be discussed in this summary. The torture method has been leaked through thousands of American citizens who have survived no-touch torture programs. The research testimony has been accumulated since 2002 and merely uses example, but its names of the victims are withheld. This report will not use skewed, misleading language such as enhanced interrogation to describe torture techniques. Why torture? The CIA claims it works. Assumption is that it works to gain actionable intelligence. It's often used for revenge, punishment, interrogation, behavior modification. In terms, torture is used to remove the continuity of thought to confuse the target, to reveal information, erase brain patterns, or break down the human spirit, make them submit and obey their handlers. The downside is that countries that do it lose moral soft power in world politics. The purpose of this report is to draw parallels between physical torture techniques and no-touch torture methods used in secret governments who possess the technologies that still go on today. Okay, here we go. Induction of depressed and manic states. The idea to shake up the emotional state of the target because the different information can be assessed to each state. Making the target feel despair and helplessness is the objective. The cycle of the hope of building and breaking is done in many ways. The techniques between physical method and no-touch technological methods are similar. Speech is very important during this process of emotional manipulation. Such examples are, we have imprisoned you without due process or hope of it. You are indefinitely detained. Hope-building examples. Sorry, we've mistaken you for somewhere else. You will be compensated for false imprisonment and torture. The main difference between the cybernetic technology and physical is that the emotional state clusters can be trained into the target mind, which speeds up the process. The communication is done differently, but perceived as human speech. In the no-touch torture method, it's helpful if the target's labeled with mental illness that is being created for discrediting purposes so as not to draw human rights groups' attention. Memory erasure. The military and CIA have been researching memory erasing drugs for years. And the focus summaries report on interrogation. Memory erasure is an important technique during interrogation. It's used in combination with sleep deprivation. There are many drugs that have been developed for physical memory erasure. One such interrogation method requires acquiring information from the target while on these drugs and recording the subject. After sleeping cycle, the interrogator claims that the target has confessed. Of course, the target remembers nothing of the conversation. The interrogator will play back samples of the subject's conversation back to them, making the subject believe that the interrogator knows more than they do. Similar techniques are used in wireless, no-touch torture and interrogation programs. The cybernetic methods of memory erasure have additional purposes. The memory eraser can be used on the cybernetic target to make the target believe that people have broken in and moved their belongings. While physical black bag jobs do occur, it's a way to make the target more paranoid. Electricity and shocks. Pain and fear of death are common tactics used during interrogation. Shocking by electricity is a traditional method exposed in secret prisons. Shocking the testicles and nipples are the most common due to their sensitivity, and interestingly, thousands of interviews of no-touch torture involve stings and shocks to various parts of their bodies over long durations. I've received shocks to my brain and my testicles. I've also received shocks in my teeth. Fear and terror. There are many terror techniques. So what this is doing right here, this is telling you the no-touch torture techniques and the other techniques. Then it's telling you how they do it wirelessly. So fear and terror. There are many techniques to induce extreme fear. Rendition dogs, power drills, guns, insects, mutilation, blow touches, tortures, waterboarding, suffocation, mock burials, mock executions are just a few. Remember that many targets of torture die from the physical effects. It's torture to death. Let's compare the no-touch torture methods used to inflict the same terror and mental anguish. In several of these techniques, the target needs to hear the handler's voice. The report does not describe the technologies used to broadcast voices to the target at a distance. While the subject can be broadcast mental images to their minds using hypnosis and other suggestions as well as visual entrainments. The more invasive controls of the brain manipulation technologies can be used to entrain the brain's automatic nervous system, such as not breathing, causing the target not to be able to sleep from fear of suffocation equivalent to waterboarding. The neurolinguistic programming can add fears such as heart attack, stroke, and cancer threats. Even motor cortex mapping can cause twitches in any part of the body. One example used a swift neck movement with a voice transmission. "We're trying to break your neck." Direct energy effects such as active denial system can make the target feel their own fire without the target dying from burns. Maximum pain and torture weapons have been evolving. Every drug can be artificially induced into the target's mind, including those of poisons. Imprisonment and isolation. Isolation is commonly used as punishment in prisons. Many whistleblowers like Bradley Manning suffer this condition. In soft interrogation, it's used to get the target to talk to their interrogator since humans have the need for companionship. In no-touch torture, the target is driven from their friends and family using different techniques in order to isolate them so the electronic mind control has more effect on their psyche. Like in Guantanamo, the target becomes isolated, losing their job and medical care. Part of the method involves slander in their community. They end up most partly in poverty and paranoid about their doctors and other people from false correlations that are purposefully induced in their lives. Isolation is a form of sensory deprivation, which will be discussed later. Days and weeks lose their meaning. Sexually disturbing tailored pornography. The summary of the state Senate report disclosed the disgusting revelations that in secret torture prisons, the target were forced to perform homosexual acts on each other against their will and religion in order to not be beaten or killed. This breakdown tactic of the belief system and the human will. In no-touch torture techniques, there are more psychologically specialized for each target. Most common examples include some homosexual targets that are forced with voices that are derogatory to their lifestyle and similar mental images. Almost all targets are forced to view child pornography in their mind. I've never experienced that personally. And vice versa is true. The heterosexual targets are forced to view homosexual acts, like in the secret U.S. torture prisons. I've been hearing a lot of targets talk about having them thoughts lately. Mutilation, also mentioned in the declassification report, was the mutilation of a human, cutting the naked target's penis and scrotum, pulling nails or teeth is common. In no-touch torture, mutilation is done by trickery. Let's look up a couple examples. There have been several targets who believe that microwave hearing effect and other voice-induced methods were done by microchip implanted in their teeth or ears. They had all their teeth pulled because they believed it was a technology called bone conductance. Others have poked out their eardrums and believed that they had microplants in their ears. There are much more examples of trickery used to make targets mutilate themselves. And I cut my throat and my wrist back in the day because I was so tired of this program, ready to die. Thank God I didn't, and I would never do it again. Personal and spiritual defamation. In physical torture, the CIA and other groups use propaganda and defamation of character for those they oppose. For detainees, they try to disenfranchise the target from their religion. They would defecate on their Bible or Quran, for example. They might say, why is your God not saving you? And no-touch torture and behavior modification, they might try to make an atheist believe in God. It's just a mechanism to alter beliefs for control and experimentation. Perhaps the target may wish to confess their secrets to a voice of God weapon. Information warfare covers the gamut of electronic communication as well. The government training exercises uses language like befriend, infiltrate, mask, mimic, ruse, set up, disrupt, create cognitive stress, use deception, ruin business relationships, and post negative information on appropriate forums in a malicious effort to target bloggers, activists, journalists, social event organizers, and anyone else deemed to be an emergency leader or a voice in the public sphere. 9. Psychological intimidation. This is a topic for a target at the beginning of trials and programs. Physical break-ins are common even if the target has an alarm system. The NSA has used stalking of foreign officials in the past for economic gain. They do black bag jobs to invade a home without a warrant. The purpose is to let the target know they're being watched and increase their paranoia. They easily hack all computer systems and cause harm to the victim's intellectual property and their relationships from that endpoint. In the no-touch torture, false correlations between pain and a neighbor coming home can be induced. 10. Rape. Rape is a common practice in torture. It causes much psychological trauma. In the United States, method of rape in their military and secret prisons is often relabeled. It's commonly done by prods, but rectal rehydration is the most common misnomer. They often call it force feeding through the rectum, but mean to induce psychological scarring and trauma. Several had died from the technique due to rectal bleeding. In no-touch torture, the physiological trauma of stimulated rape takes on different forms. Users often called EEG heterodyne, the target will receive molestation effects of their genitals. In this, men can be, and similarly, women can be wirelessly raped by the analog function and perception. Sorry, I just had to, I'm just reading. It's vulgar and it's wrong, but it goes on, so that's why I'm reading it. Dietary manipulation, force weakness, and sickness. The idea by the dietary manipulation is to weaken target. This is easily done in a physical setting, but in no-touch torture, the hunger trigger needs to be suppressed. Sometimes a false correlation between eating food and sickness is induced to make the target believe they are being poisoned. However, poisoning is a common in physical renditions too. Repetition. A verbal breakdown is most important during interrogation and torture. Obviously, speaking the language of the target is necessary. That's why they're interrogators in all language. Repetition is an important neurolinguistic program in interrogation tactic to influence the target mind. During the breakdown process, threats to kill and torture the target's family or friends are common. Repetition, question, and breakdown phrases are automated in both physical and no-touch torture versions of torture. An interesting technology that is used for no-touch torture is called chatterbots. Chatterbots, artificial intelligence program, automate much of the repetition so that interrogators don't drive themselves crazy during the neurolinguistic torture and programming phase. Let's not forget the Chinese water torture, a single drop of water on the forehead of the detainee for months. Repetition is a form of torture. Sensitization of pain impulses. While the reverse can be obtained, optimizing perceived pain and misery is the objective in torture. Each trauma adds to the overall misery of life. Optimization of pain has been studied by the military and intelligence agents. In the past, CIA has used drugs like LSD to enhance fear and terror in the subject. Other methods such as hypnosis can trigger perceived pain and power suggestion, such as telling the subject his pinky finger is going to be cut off before it's done. In no-touch torture, the same psychological manipulations are exerted. Subliminal and overt suggested are often told to the subject before the direct energy weapon or EEG heterodyne pain inductions in order to maximize their effectiveness. Sensory overload and deprivation. Again, this technique of overloading and depriving the human of sensory stimulus is ubiquitous in torture around the world, not just in U.S. secret prisons. Torture subjects in the United States reported the use of repetitive bad music and noise campaigns. As unusual torture technique used in the secret prison ways was of use of a plastic suit filled with ice while they beat the target. Ultra bright light for days on end. Hot and cold temperatures change in the environment are frequent. In no-touch torture, the target's brain is forced to release dopamine, which causes pupil dilation. This acts as a sensory overload. For example, the non-lethal microwave weapons research done by a professor in the University of Nevada has shown this capability. Body metabolism can be altered with these weapons, causing hot and cold flashes. Targets of no-touch torture often hear endless tinnitus. And I know y'all can relate to that. I can. Sexual humility and lack of humiliation, and lack of privacy. Often used in common prison is a lack of privacy. It's both for necessity, security, and form of sexual humiliation. Also in prison, many people are raped. No-touch torture offers the same sexual humiliation and lack of privacy by using through-the-wall radar, cameras, EEG visual cloning to let the target know they're being watched. Degrading comments are often used on the no-touch torture techniques while they're naked or in the bathroom. Maximum sensory pain techniques. Basic torture involves brutalization, physical strikes, kicks in the groin, pepper spray, or tear gas. Anything that involves maximum pain is objective. Amazingly, these same basic torture techniques can be done wirelessly into the human mind. All forms of sickness have been reported without any real illness behind the suffering. All suffering can be entrained in the minds of no-touch torture subjects. 17. Sleep deprivation. The number one torture method along with the popularity of oppressive waterboarding. This is done in every country that uses torture. The U.S. is number one in torture since they are currently the world's only superpower. A repetitive sleep deprivation cycle is generally done 180 hours out of a week and out of 7.5 days at a time in physical renditions, or in no-touch torture 5 days awake and 2 days of sleep. Sleep deprivation accomplishes the objective of memory loss during interrogation and induces hallucinations which help with the interrogation process. In behavior modification and programming, it is necessary too. Stress positions. Keeping detainees handcuffed above their head to walls so they must stand for days, a common ploy in torture. These types pose the stress positions. They can be mimicked in no-touch torture. One example trick requires the target believe they can deflect radar energy using pots or plans that is directional. The target is being given ample amount of pain until their hands and arms are spread apart, holding the pans, trying to block signals. They must maintain that position in order to get any relief from the torture signals. However, the stress position itself is torture. Often accompanying this technique are voices saying to the target, "You're doing it to yourself." We will finish off the summary of U.S. and torture and behavior modification with ideas of why they are done to the general public and falsely accused detainees. Anyone can be put in these programs. Justice and rule of law does not exist at the highest levels of government. Treaties are worthless because the number one agreement in the U.S. rules of war, a ban against the torture, is not obeyed. This creates a more brutal and barbaric-led society. No-touch torture uses the same interrogation tactics as physical interrogation tactics, but with new twists. Techniques such as Jeff and Mutt, aka good cop, bad cop, are used. The bad cop tortures the subject, the target, and the good cop tries to gain their trust. In mind control, trust games are commonly employed to manipulate the beliefs of the target. Creating hatred of groups through false correlation and deception is a common CIA method of trickery. In these programs, the targets put through these phases as written in documentation. Disorient and confuse target. Use them for our purpose and dispose of them any way possible. We can only surmise by our sample set of 1,000 people. Our sample set of 1,000 people what dispose means. Prison, suicide, perhaps mental hospital. Coercing and torturing people to suicide is very common. Both tactics and physical and no-touch torture involves plausible deniability. The no-touch interrogations are better. Physical renditions techniques for exposing networks. Traditional NSA tracking or email and phone calls are useful, but if the targets are taken into a secret prison, they can't contact their networks. In no-touch torture, the target will contact everyone who might help them. Then those relationships can be destroyed to isolate the target. All these techniques rely on the target having a fear of death and pain. Deception is very important during interrogation. In physical interrogations, the targets are often drugged. This creates confusion necessary to pull off certain trickery. In terrorist interrogation, for example, the CIA uses fake newspapers to make the target believe whatever event they were suspected of plotting already happened, obviously looking for a confession. Sometimes the government in charge of this torture is looking for political gain through a false confession. Nonetheless, these false flag operations are commonly used in both forms of torture and interrogation. The trick is to make the target believe another foreign country is doing it to them. In no-touch torture, the trick is to make them believe someone related to them is behind their suffering. Voice transformation and morphing is an interesting technology also used in both in physical and wireless interrogation. It's a form of deception used against the target to trick them believing they're speaking to real people that they know. It's been used in war to trick generals. Obviously, spoofing email and other identity on the internet forums can be used in this manner too. Finally, the topic of human experimentation for improving weapons, torture, interrogation, social disruption methods will be breached. Most of the techniques mentioned above work most effectively if the target has no SRE training. SRE stands for survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, or psychological understanding of methods to influence the human mind. Unfortunately, every sample point in the world society needs to be studied to improve weapons. This is why random people are put into the torture and mind control experiments. There's some devious uses of a secret army of remote controlled assassins in every country of the world. The samples must include different education, language, culture, economic factors. Obviously, silencing dissidents, oppositions, political parties, and whistleblowers are included in the list of application. The most disturbing of the trends in the torture is testing and improving it. No-touch torture is much more complex than physical torture. Testing design flaws and weakness of signal intelligence, one reason why it's necessary to test on innocent targets. Often the subject will be taunted by the statement, "Try to stop us." This statement forces the torture subject to try to figure out shooting and jamming techniques to stop the wireless torture and help the weapons designer improve on the system. However, the physical, psychological, and perceived pain is only half the story with no-touch torture. It also involves a set of scripts, mind games, if you will, to walk the target to murder or suicide. This is called hypergame theory. It is used in war games to determine how to control your enemies and targets. Game theory can be used on governments, individuals, for determined propaganda to alter cultures. The experiments on public provide a means to test the efficacy of these scripts and determine under what circumstances to use them. One last comment on why we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex, as President Eisenhower warned. During these torture programs run by the U.S. and its allies, accurate truth data points need to be used to judge the efficiency of the interrogation methods. This is why there's dispute between the CIA and Senate Intelligence Committee reports about the use of torture. Subterfuge by the CIA hacking into the Senate's Oversight Committee's computer is a big deal. A rogue agency has been formed. Data fusion centers, Homeland Security fusion centers, NSA, and FBI collect data on Americans. This data is used during torture and interrogation of Americans in no-touch torture. I'm really glad y'all listened all the way to the end. Like I said, I'm going to try to get to more interviews this week, because I'm getting tortured too. So, when I try, sometimes, I don't even feel like doing interviews. I don't feel like talking to nobody. So a lot of times I got this list of people, like right now I'm in isolation mode. I don't really feel like talking to nobody right now. I'm talking to the camera, yeah, but as far as communicating with people, sometimes I'm not in the mood. I'm very, very antisocial, and it's made me this way. This program's made me this way. So, it might be like I got a list. Let me see if it's here. I might have misplaced it. No, I didn't. I got a list of names right here. But I don't feel like reaching out to them right now. Just not in the mood. That's what it does. The other day I had a really bad spell. I got hit and I was dizzy, couldn't see, vertigo, my whole body's vibrating. I'm shocked to the brain at the same time. Then they made me sleepy, and then I laid down to sleep, couldn't sleep because I was hurting and getting shocked so bad. Then they start shocking my left testicle. I mean, they were hitting me hard the other day. And, I finally had to take a sleeping pill, and I took my medicine or whatever, and then bam, I went to sleep for like an hour. I woke up and they had stopped hitting me. And then they started back later on that day when I tried to take another nap. For some reason, if I close my eyes, my stuff starts. So if I'm having a day and I'm not getting hit and I close my eyes, I start getting shocked, vibrated, heated up, nauseated, so, but you got to understand, I never leave the house. So the stalking and stuff, they can't do that on me. So they're hitting me with weapons really, really, really hard. So anyway, I hope this helps some people understand what they're doing with this no-touch torture stuff. And God bless all TIs. And like I said, anybody who got any, somebody said forced speech. I got a video on forced speech if you scroll through it. I've got like 400 videos and really good information in them videos. Now that I have more subscribers, I really need to start doing them videos over again because there was some really good information that y'all missed. And I need to I'm going to try to make playlists of good information videos that I did because, I've been doing videos for 2 years and got like 500 of them. So anyway, God bless all TIs, and I hope y'all have a good day.